Troika Games was co-founded by Jason Anderson, Tim Cain, and Leonard Boyarsky. The company was focused on role-playing games. The developer would create 3 cult classics: Arcanum, Vampire the Masquerade, and the Temple of Elemental Evil. In 1997, Tim, Leonard, and Jason worked on the Fallout sequel at Interplay. Finishing the initial design for Fallout 2, they were unable to come to an agreement with Interplay about the future team structure. They formed their new company, called Troika Games, a Russian word meaning three of a kind. They initially planned to do games exclusively for Sierra Entertainment, but ended up using 3 different publishers for each game. After being unable to secure funding for future projects, they were forced to shut down the company in 2005. The first game to be developed by Troika was Arcanum of Steamworks and Magic Obscura. The game's story takes place within a fantasy setting currently undergoing a transformation from its own industrial revolution, in which magic competes against technological gadgets and focuses on the efforts of a Zeppelin crash survivor to find out who attacked the vessel, ultimately discovering a plot by an ancient power to return to the world and cause chaos.
And also, I just want to point out at this point, Sierra was a really, really good publisher. We loved working with them, and we would have continued working with them if they hadn't run into these issues. They gave us really wide latitude with Arcanum. Keep in mind, first-time company, making a very huge, feature-rich game, having only made one game before, Fallout. We had a complex character creation and leveling. We had branching story. We had so many side quests, because we had side quests for skill mastery. We had over 40 end slides in this game. There was so much branching. There were so many things we were trying to cover in end slides. We also, no single character build could see all of those end slides. It just couldn't happen. They gave us full control of the box covers, of the ads, of the manual. Leonard and Jason handled a lot of the cover and ads, although we did have a comic book artist named Glenn Fabry. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He did art for some of them. Leonard talks about this in the part 2 chat I did with him. I'll link that below. I wrote most of the manual, threw a recipe in there. I have a video about my recipes. They also let us keep the code rights. So even though they would own the IP, we own the code. And that's the code we use to do Temple. That's the only reason we could do Temple so quickly.
Arcanum begins with a cutscene of a luxury Zeppelin on her maiden voyage from Caledon to Tarrant. 2 monoplanes piloted by half-ogre bandits close in on the craft and commence attack runs, succeeding in shooting it down. An old gnome who was a passenger aboard the Zephyr is now in his death throes under charred debris and tells the player to bring a silver ring to the boy, and promptly dies. Being the only survivor of the crash, the main character is proclaimed as the Living One, a holy reincarnate, by the only witness to the crash, Virgil. The story follows the player's path as they search for the origin of the ring. Over the course of the game, the player uncovers more about the history of the continent, the motivation of the assassins who are trying to kill them, and the identity of the one threatening to end all life in the land. Arcanum is an example of a non-linear role-playing game. At various points throughout the game, players may take the story in different directions, sometimes permanently removing different paths of action. The game's central quest ultimately develops according to how players navigate its dichotomies, the most apparent being that of magic and technology. Many of the game's side quests allow for more than one solution depending on the player character's specializations, and certain portions of the main quest can be solved more easily through dialogue than through combat. The game is also notable for being possible to complete in everything from a completely pacifist to a completely violent way. The player can, technically, kill every person they meet and still complete the game. Even the very first companion they meet at the start of the game, if the person was an important NPC with plot information to divulge, they will carry that information with them in the form of a journal. Likewise, the player is technically able to avoid combat altogether from start to finish, and can defeat even the final boss of the game without using violence. Arcanum's large, open world bears many similarities to Fallout with regards to the scarcity of towns, cities, or other locations of interest. However, Arcanum's map is much larger and more diverse than Fallout's. On release, Arcanum would be plagued with bugs. Troika would gain a reputation of releasing unfinished games that were prone to crashing. The combination of bugs, poor user interface, and underwhelming combat has made Arcanum hard for many gamers to get into. The 3 Troika titles have benefited from modders creating unofficial patches. These patches and mods are generally now regarded as the best way to play the games, although these do not entirely overcome many of the game's jankier aspects. Despite these flaws, many hardcore RPG fans have come to see Arcanum as a classic of the genre. In September 2006, one of Arcanum's lead programmers and co-founder of Troika, Leonard Boyarsky, divulged that the studio had originally commenced work on a sequel, going by the working title of Journey to the Center of Arcanum, which would use Valve's Source engine. Development was curtailed by disputes between Sierra and Valve, resulting ultimately in the project being shelved. Tim Cain described how the sequel would take inspiration from Jules Verne's Journey to the Center of the Earth, and it would have taken place underground. In the story, the player character would be hired by the wife of Franklin Payne to find her husband. Payne had gone on an underground expedition in a search for an ancient civilization after building a drilling machine. During the game, the player would find a special ore that allows them to create items where magic and technology could be combined without conflict. The game received 2 Editor's Choice Awards from IGN and GameZone with scores of 8.7 out of 10 and 90 out of 100. IGN stated that the story is rich and complex. Arcanum proved a commercial success for Troika following its release, selling over 200,000 copies and generating revenue of over $8.8 million.
So you end up going down the shaft left by that boring machine and searching for Franklin Payne. And along the way, just spoilers for this 23-year-old design, you encounter old civilizations, most of them in ruins, cavemen, dinosaurs. That was going to be fun because, we had magic and tech. You might as well throw dinosaurs in there. And one of the penultimate discoveries you made before you found Franklin Payne was the discovery of an ore that let you blend magic and technology into the same item without them being in conflict. And those items could be used then independent of your magic tech bar. So it was very exciting, and we had all these great ideas. It didn't happen, which, you know.